With each new discovery, new concepts enter the social world and often influence the way in which people think about their lives and the world they live in. The atom, for example. In 1800, John Dalton reintroduced the concept of the atom, and almost a century later, in 1897, electrons were discovered. As part of the ever further incrementalization of the world, the shift moved from the planetary bodies toward the microscopic and building blocks of life. Quantum theory moved us away from the model akin to planetary bodies circling a nucleus to these electrons spinning at fixed orbits. The most prominent ideas that transferred to the social world from this concept of the atom were that, one, the world was made up of parts, and like anything else, new forms could be made from those constituent parts, which led to things like social engineering and the manipulation of the masses. And then two, the unseen world, like that of germs, could make their impact on the visible world. There was, in fact, a myriad of life happening beneath our perceptions that we were unaware of. So in the late 19th century, there were many enthusiasts for social engineering, and eugenics was one of those byproducts of this enthusiasm that was trying to shape society by changing its underlying constituent parts. The technological advancements that had been achieved in the last 100 years of scientific experimentation have brought a sense that progress was inevitable and would continue towards a technological utopia. That utopia was an idea of achieving a perfect society on Earth, first proposed by Thomas More in the 16th century. It had quickly become an easy target for satire, such as with Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels in 1736. So Kurt Laswitz was an optimist and a Kantian humanist. This meant that he believed that he was looking towards positive change achieved through reason with the improvement for humanity at its center. He was a mathematics teacher at a secondary school in Germany who also wrote his own definition of what science fiction should be based upon his principles and dedication to progress and reason. He is best known for his anti-war novel, Two Planets, originally published in 1897. It was an international bestseller at the time and has run through several reprints even to this very day. The last big reprint being the English translation from 1976. The text you were assigned to the absolute zero of existence was one of his earliest attempts at a purely speculative fiction, often with the ideas that are presented to describe the setting being more noteworthy than the story itself. The year of its publication is 1871, and it's a significant year in German history as it was the first year there was a Germany at all. In the 1850s and 1860s, the economic union of the Zollverein and the establishment of obligatory public schooling in many of the post-Napoleon states and sort of princedoms would eventually lead to their union with the economic and military powerhouse of the North, Prussia, at its center. It was a year of much optimism as the new voting system, though weighted to favor the landed upper class called Junkers and the wealthy, it still allowed participation in government through vote for the middle class. The initial years were prosperous and were known as the foundation period from 1871 to 1873. There was great economic enthusiasm as the railway was heavily expanded and a currency reform to paper money had led to greater circulation of that currency and thereby greater economic activity. This fueled a large optimism until the Black Friday of 1873, when the markets crashed and the New Germany suffered under an economic depression. As the mood shifted, anti-Semitism and anti-Catholicism grew, and amid the growing xenophobia, heightened nationalism, and combative rhetoric, Laswitz wrote Two Planets, in which he describes a love story between a Martian and an Earthling, and their relationship helps avert war, and this provides a backdrop for a multitude of speculative social and technological advancements. To the absolute zero of existence, we can already see how masses are described with a keen eye on the cultural impact of technologies, and many of the speculative devices would soon find real-world counterparts. The influence of Laswitz on engineers in the United States are directly linked through Hugo Gernsback, the editor and writer of Amazing Stories, who read and emulated Laswitz. And then also Hans Dominic, who would influence many of the scientists who only emigrated then after World War II to the United States. So some of the most notable speculations we see in Laswit's short story include the images of a city of the masses as he imagined an overpopulated future Earth. This leads him to think there would be an urban landscape with rooftop gardens, airplanes that he terms flying carriages and air velocipedes. And these are decades before flight is achieved or we see sort of widespread construction of skyscrapers. An aspect of speculating is labeling those technologies and cultural practices that do not yet exist. And so this is these newly coined terms that refer to the speculative future are called neologisms. For example, the otochord is a neologism. And Laswitz imagines this otochord as entertainment that focuses on a different sensation, here with smells that are woven together in this musical metaphor. He imagines skyscrapers 25 stories high with the ground floors restricted for agriculture, escalators and skyways connecting these buildings to each other. There is a universal language, something that was later experimented with as the idea of the League of Nations took hold, and they wanted some type of language of equity for discussion. The hyphenated last names of the protagonists were also a nod towards a more equitable union in marriage, and it was signified in both the names of mothers and fathers being used for their children. Other technologies included a weather manufacturer with the description of how it was to work, as well as protoplasm, which had replaced the function of pets, which may or may not no longer exist there. The concept of juicing or taking an entire meal with a single pill appears, as well as the kind of food printer vending machine that produces food. There's the improvement of logistics that allows for the transport and sale of what would otherwise be non-native exotic fruits and vegetables to be consumed all over the world. The economic impact of overpopulation forces food cooperatives, and in these communal dining halls, people watch large screens, which are like ticker tapes that produce the news from all over the world. So many of Laswitz's speculations become a reality in some form in the following decades, while others, such as the railway war in Russia, just don't come to pass. It is, however, an excellent example of his concept of speculation that was to predict the future on the contemporary science and psychological theories of that day. So it was the concept model of the atom by Dalton, in which an atom that serves as a backdrop to the adoption of social engineering. And social engineering was then used as a means of controlling and directing populations that were then seen as these constituents making up a larger group, a mass that could be manipulated. And it spread to other forms of experimentation, such as in art, where you have pointillism, where if one were to stand very close to such a painting, you would only see the single dot, but as you step away, you begin to see the image they combine to create. And so the discovery of the atom and that concept moving into the larger social sphere moves us from the idea of planetary bodies as these solid concrete objects to the more microscopic